Hey guys, so this is my roommate Olivia, and she's going to be coming to Stull with me, and she doesn't really know anything about it, so she'll get to be learning about this along with you guys. She's the one who actually introduced me to Stull from a TikTok that she sent me way back in August, and little did she know I would obsessively research it to the fact that we would be going multiple times. So get ready for an adventure. Hey guys, so we just made it to Stull, and we're in the cemetery right now, and we're just gonna kind of look around. We couldn't really find anywhere to park, and they don't want anybody in here really. When we pulled in, just this little gate was open. Only half of the gate was open, and my car barely fit through there, so they really are trying to avoid people coming in here. They have multiple no trespassing signs. We're placing bets on how long until the cops come and tell us we can't be here to do this, because they are very adamant about people not capitalizing on the hauntedness and tragedy of their town. So we will see what we find and keep you guys updated. So when Stull was first founded, it was originally called Deer Creek, but later it was renamed after their postmaster, Sylvester Stull. And we have found the graves of his descendants, Henry and Matilda. There's some other Stull graves as well, but I believe this is his son and daughter-in-law, and that's who the town was renamed after, so that's pretty cool. So it's really interesting. It looks like there's no groundskeeper here. Like, there's lots of like leaves in big piles, like no one has been taking care of this place, and it's really sad to think about how little respect is for the dead here. Almost like their graves aren't cleaned, some of them are unreadable. It's really sad to think that they are almost forgotten here. So something that's really interesting to me is a lot of the graves here are from like the mid 1800s to very early 1900s. This one here, born in 1840, died in 1907 and 1922. Another thing I've noticed is the further back we go, the older the graves are, and the more forward towards the entrance are more like recent deaths, and they go in kind of an ascending order, or descending, I guess. So Olivia just found a prime example of one of the reasons Stull has been like defaced because of its lore, and right here in the street, I don't know if you can see it, there's a pentagram drawn on the street. Just right in the middle of the main street of the town, someone took red spray paint and made a pentagram because of the lore of Stull. When we first came to Stull, we came at night not knowing that they locked their cemetery down, and there are multiple no trespassing signs littered all over the gate of the cemetery because they do not want people in there defacing and destroying their property. So they keep it on a tight lockdown at night. When we came, a cop followed us for a little bit, and there were cops everywhere, but one followed us for a while. So we're at the Stull Church, and as you can see, this sign right here is talking about the community and how they supported them after the fire. And a couple years ago, this church, I'll turn around, this church right here actually got lit on fire and burned most of the way down, and they had to reconstruct. And it was very suspicious because they did not know like how the fire started, and it's another thing that added to the Stull lore. So as you guys can see up there, there's still some residual like scorch marks from the fire, and even out here it smells burnt, which is crazy because the fire was like a couple of years ago, I think. So maybe the burnt smell is different, but you can see those scorch marks for sure. So even while we were at the cemetery, a man who lives across the street came out and was watching us because the people who live in Stull are very protective of their community, and they don't like when strangers come in and are talking about Stull lore, so they were watching us and making sure we weren't doing anything bad. So it was very interesting to see how quickly he came out to watch what we were doing. So one of the things I noticed while we were here is there's only about 4 or 5 houses, and that's it. Like, there's not a lot of people who live here anymore, and that's probably one of the reasons I would call it a lost city. Is it's basically abandoned. Like, there's no one taking care of a lot of like the outside, like even at the churches. Like, it's very not well taken care of on the outside. We were not able to go inside, but you can tell on the outside it's like not well taken care of. So that TikTok that Olivia showed me,
this town is so haunted, the Pope refuses to fly over it, and Ariana Grande got so spooked here, she immediately left. This is the infamous and creepy Stull, Kansas. Since the 1970s, Stull, Kansas has become well known due to the creepy legend that the nearby Stull Cemetery is controlled by dark forces. Located between Topeka and Lawrence, Stull, Kansas is known as a gateway to the underworld. Throughout the years, many who have visited the cemetery claim to have experienced strange things here, such as hearing noises, seeing things they shouldn't, and even having lapses in memory. Not just a moment or two, visitors claim that they have large portions of time that are unaccounted for during their visit to the Stull Cemetery. The legend behind the town is that during the 20th century, it suffered two major tragedies. Two residents of the town passed in really tragic ways. After this, many were convinced that the Stull Cemetery was controlled by dark forces, and people began reporting truly creepy things happening there. May seem like a bunch of folklore, but it's said that during the 90s, the Pope redirected his flight so he could avoid flying over Stull. What? And this church in Stull was also legendary. It was said that back when it stood, if you walked up to it and counted more than 7 windows, you were in danger. In an interview with Complex years ago, Ariana Grande spoke of her visit to Stull. She was initially excited to check out the legendary area. But as her group entered, she said they, quote, felt this sick, overwhelming feeling of negativity over the whole car, and we smelled sulfur. She said she rolled down the window to apologize, and they quickly left. But it didn't end there. She shared a photo of her visit on social media, but later took it down when strange things started happening after she left. She reportedly started hearing a really loud rumble and whispers. She also reported seeing really disturbing images with red shapes when she would close her eyes. Creepy. Stull is a particular hotspot on Halloween, as is with most haunted places when the veil between the living and the past is thought to be lowered. Some locals to Stull believe all this to be untrue. Just a bunch of hocus pocus.
It got so big that even like a Supernatural episode was based here, because the Winchester brothers of Supernatural were born in Lawrence, which is really interesting. But their final like big battle episode of one of their seasons was in Stull.
Did you see where the title fight goes down?
The Angels are keeping it top secret. Very hush-hush.
Oh, crap.
But I saw it anyway. Perks of being a prophet. It's tomorrow. High noon. Place called Stull Cemetery.
Stull Cemetery. Would I know that? That's an old boneyard outside of Lawrence. Why Lawrence?
Don't know. It all has to end where it started, I guess.
It's good to see you, Michael.
You too. It's been too long.
Can you believe it's finally here?
No. Not really.
So, speaking of Lawrence, this actually ties to KU directly, and it's how Stull got its nickname as being one of the 7 gateways to hell. So, back in the 70s, the professor Jane Penner, who worked as a German professor at KU, started this rumor and told her students that Stull, a little town 10 miles away, was one of the 7 gateways of hell. And it got published in the Daily Kansan and just spiraled from there. One of the interesting things to me, though, is when Stull was first established, it was mainly German immigrants, and I don't know what Penner's heritage was, but he did teach German, so I wonder if there's a correlation between the Germans that originally settled here and his heritage, maybe. So I'm sitting here still in Stull, getting ready to edit some of this video, and I'm looking at the Wi-Fi networks, and one of the Wi-Fi networks here in Stull is called Gateway. So another thing that kind of started the Stull lore was in the 1900s, a boy was accidentally burned by his own father, like burned to death by his own father. And then later, a man was found hanging in a tree, and both of these happened at the same location on Devil's Road is the name of the road. So obviously, really good start being on Devil's Road, but this road doesn't even exist anymore. Like it's been like leveled out and not a road anymore because of all the bad stuff that happened there. But both of those things happened in the same place, and that was the start of the Stull lore. So that's awful. So there was another rumor that in the 1850s a young boy killed the town's mayor, but this was disproved because back then, like, the theory was that he killed him in the cemetery so that the demons could like take his soul. But back then, not only was Stull not organized as a town, so it didn't have a mayor, but the cemetery also did not exist at that point. So both of these things disproved it because like it couldn't have happened, but people were making up all sorts of rumors about Stull and creepy things that had happened here, and most of them were not true. Those first two were true. You can find them in newspaper articles, and so that's really sad, but then it just blew up into so many rumors. There's also a rumor that the band The Cure canceled one of their shows that was in Lawrence because of the presence of spirits in Stull. So that church that we were at earlier was actually, it used to be an abandoned church, but because of the night of things that had happened there, they tore it down and rebuilt the new church, the one that was then burned a few years ago. But there's a lot of lore about the old church, and I have a quote that I want to read. It says, they say that in the basement of the abandoned church in Stull, there's a staircase, and if you follow that staircase, you will reach the entrance to hell itself. And if you can crawl your way back up that ladder and escape from the bowels of hell to reach the surface, you will have to climb for weeks. That is, if the devil does not grab you first. And they also say that on the night before Halloween, a woman in a white dress lures drivers to their death along the highway's edge, never to be seen again. That highway, right there, the one we're currently basically sitting on. So that makes me feel real good about being here. So we were looking in the graveyard for this super haunted tree that I'll tell you about in just a second, and we could not find it, so I imagine that they removed it. But they say that there was an old tree in the graveyard that served as gallows for condemned witches who return each year on Halloween as Satan's army. They also say it is Beelzebub, the Satan, it's a form of Satan, it's his grave, and the voices of the dead will strangle you while evil spirits carve out your innards. Yay. Another thing I found while doing research was someone wrote a whole poem about Stull and how it's a gateway to hell, and this is just like the first part of it. If someone tells you to go to hell, take Highway 40 and proceed 10 miles west from Lawrence. But if you want to see the devil himself, make your brave voyage on the night of the spring equinox or Halloween. Basically, they say that if you come on the spring equinox or Halloween, you can see the stairway, and Satan will be there, and all the good stuff will culminate into those 2 nights of the year. In addition to other media about Stull, there was a movie made that was actually filmed here in Stull, whereas the other things were kind of just set in Stull but filmed on another location. And this movie was made in 2013, and it was called Nothing Left to Fear, and I'll put the poster right here. I couldn't find any clips because it's a very, like, underground film. It didn't really blow up like it was supposed to, but it was about a man who moved here to become the pastor at the church with his family, and then the town's eerie past was like messing with his family, and basically like every horror movie, but it was actually filmed here in Stull, which is pretty cool. So a lot of the reason the citizens of Stull are very weary to strangers is after the Daily Kansan article, a lot of students would come on Halloween or just around Halloween and party and destroy property and mark it up, graffiti, all sorts of stuff, like the pentagram that we showed. And they got very upset, and that's kind of when their like lockdown had started, like when they started closing the cemetery, and they made sure cops were on parole at night because of stupid college students. I feel bad for the citizens of Stull, but they're very proud of like who lives here. They're very proud of like what they've done other than the negative stuff, and that's really cool that they're still keeping this town alive, even if it is mostly abandoned. Like, good for them for still seeing the positive in things.